The subject I'm going to talk about is wellness in spiritual life, spiritual wellness through the 4 yogas. What is spirituality and what can it do for us? Bhagavan Buddha was once asked by one of his monks, Buddhist monks, that, I have this doubt. Long ago, you taught us that there is suffering and there's a reason for suffering, which is desire, and there is an end to suffering, which is nirvana, and there is a way out of suffering, which is the Ashtanga Marga, so famously taught by the Buddha. And suffering also you defined old age, disease, death. But now we find we are following your teachings, but we are all getting old. We are getting disease also, and death is coming near, not only for us, but for you also. You're also getting old and sick, and one day perhaps your body also will die. So old age, disease, death, and that means suffering is continuing, even though we are following your teachings. What is your message, and how does it work? How does it overcome suffering? So Bhagavan Buddha gave a very nice answer, very, very incisive answer as to what spirituality is. He said, consider a man hit by an arrow, pierced by an arrow. Imagine the shock and the pain and the suffering. And imagine that he is hit by a second arrow immediately. How much more suffering that increases. Now, the first arrow is the suffering that the world throws at us. The things that happens in the world, like old age in the body and disease and social problems, financial problems, relationship problems, health problems, and so on. All of the events which happen in the world and which give us suffering. The second arrow which hits is our reaction to all of this. How do we take all this? And it is that second arrow which really causes the maximum amount of suffering. What happens in the world can be pleasant and unpleasant, but really that is not the cause of suffering. The real cause of suffering is that second arrow, our reaction to the events of the world. How do we react to disease, to old age, to approaching death of the body, to the behavior of others? So this reaction, there lies suffering. So the nature of suffering is like being hit by two arrows. One arrow is what the world throws at us. The second arrow is how we react to it. And it is that second arrow, our reaction contains suffering. And then the Buddha says, all that I have taught and all that spirituality can do is remove that suffering which is caused by the second arrow. Pleasant and unpleasant events coming from the world, they will keep coming. They have come for everybody in the world, all living beings, all human beings, including enlightened beings also. So just as you said, there is old age, there is disease and death, even for enlightened persons, whether it is Buddha or Swamiji mentioned Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda. Vivekananda passed very young. He used to say, I will not live to see 40. He passed at the age of 39. So no, he did not see old age, but disease, certainly. His body broke down under overwork. But they were able to overcome suffering. There is the famous incident, Sri Ramakrishna is dying of cancer, throat cancer, and very sick and suffering. One of his disciples, Hari, who later became Swami Turiyananda, young man, he comes, he asks, sir, how are you today? And Sri Ramakrishna says, not well, there is pain here and I cannot eat. Then the tumor is there, And then Swami Turiyananda, Hari, who later became Turiyananda, he says, but sir, I see you are in great bliss. What a strange thing to say to a man dying of cancer, terminal cancer patient. And Sri Ramakrishna acknowledges it. He laughs and he says, oh, the rascal has found me out. In Bengali, oh, shala dhore niyeche. That there is, at a certain level of the body, there is this tumor, there is pain, and then I cannot eat. That is true. He's not acting. But underneath that, deeper than that, he has got something established in something from which perspective there is no suffering. He is fine. But that's the difference between the enlightened person and us. That's the difference between the yogi and the bhogi. That if we are not spiritual, then we are defined by that suffering. We are subject to both the arrows. Whereas the enlightened person, the external things keep happening. Cancer has happened, old age is coming, death is coming. But internally, the effect of that second arrow is not there at all. That real cause of suffering has gone. So this is what spirituality can do. Yoga deals with both arrows. I was thinking about it. Once I went to a hospital. I was asked to give a talk in Arizona, a talk to doctors and staff and all. And I told them about the two arrows. And I said, you in the hospital, you deal with the first arrow, physical illness and all. And the second arrow is the actual suffering, and spirituality can help there. But I was thinking, the knowledge of yoga, it is all encompassing. It helps us in dealing with the first arrow, old age, disease, death. So Hatha Yoga and practices associated with it, and other knowledge systems from ancient India like Ayurveda. I know you have many wonderful talks in this workshop. If you look at it, the talks cover the entire gamut from dealing with the suffering caused by the first arrow and the deeper solutions offered by removing the effect of that second arrow. So there is Ayurveda and many other knowledge systems from ancient India which help us to mitigate the effects of the events, unpleasant events in the world and in our body mind. However, the deep insight of Indian civilization is no amount of worldly cures is permanent. There is an ancient text called Sankhya Karika. um, Ishwar Krishna, he wrote it, very ancient text. And in that, the first shloka gives us the argument for spiritual life. What can spiritual life do? Why spiritual life? Why yoga is necessary? There, the author says, Dukkhatrayabhigatat jihasa tad apaghatake heto drishte sapatha na atyanta ekantatyanta bhavat. Afflicted by the threefold sorrows, physical sorrows, natural sorrows, sorrows created by other people and other living beings, all sorts of sorrows and suffering in the world, afflicted by this, we look for solution, how to overcome suffering in this world, how to attain fulfillment. Now, question might be that, well, there are so many material ways, natural ways of overcoming sorrow. If you are sick, there is the hospital. If you are bored, there is television and internet. If you want company, there are friends, and nowadays online chat and all these things are there. It says, no, those things do not offer a deep solution. Why? Because all things that the world offers, like everything in the world, it is ekanta atyanta bhava. There is no guarantee that any of them will work. See, I was just thinking, in this most advanced country, in the most powerful advanced country in the world, 2 years back, I was here in New York, maximum amount of COVID infection, sickness and deaths here in New York, in Manhattan. More than 1,000 people were dying every day. So with all our technology and resources, there's no guarantee that you will be able to tackle the blows that life rains upon us. Ekanta bhava and atyanta bhava. Even if you can tackle the problems, you feel hungry, eat a nice meal, you will feel hungry again. Cure one disease, another disease will come. No matter how much, even Hatha Yoga practices, balanced diet, Ayurvedic diet and whatnot, all of it we follow, then it will be a healthy life. You will not suffer so much. But still, old age, disease and death are final. It will come for everybody. There is no ultimate solution here. Is there any ultimate solution anywhere? Yes, there is. That is the promise of yoga. Not only at the worldly level, but there is a spiritual solution from which perspective we can say honestly that I have overcome suffering, that the greatest of sufferings, they will come from the world. First arrow will come, and yet it cannot shake me. No second arrow. Krishna says to Arjuna that yasmin sthito dukkhena guruna api vichalyate. Settled in which, after that realization, one cannot be shaken by the heaviest of sorrows, means that heaviest of sorrows may come in life, but it will not shake you. First arrow will come, but no effect. So that is the highest idea of human wellness. There is an idea of human wellness which yoga can offer at this worldly level. It can cure a number of diseases. It can prevent stress. It can have give us a long lifespan, a healthy life. One doctor was telling me, with modern medical technology, Swami, we can ensure you will live long, but we cannot ensure you will live well. And that's true of modern medicine. But Yoga, Ayurveda and other technologies are there which will ensure you live long and you live well also. But still, all limited. Human lifespan is limited. Is there some deep solution to this problem of death and suffering in life? Yoga offers that. Sri Ramakrishna said this life is full of thorns. Um, the wise person will put on shoes so that he can walk over the thorns without being affected. What is these shoes? This yoga, spiritual realization, are the shoes which we must put on to walk through the pathways of life, which are littered with is full of thorns and full of challenges and suffering. All right. So yoga is what does it. We must put on the shoes of yoga to protect ourselves from the thorns of life. We start with the outermost and go inward. Our activities, actions. All yoga, whether karma yoga, bhakti yoga, raja yoga, jnana yoga. By the way, these four yogas is like one of Swami Vivekananda's insights, great insights, that a variety of spiritual paths are there. Variety of spiritual paths, especially in India. But all of them can be broadly classified under these four heads. One is karma yoga, all our activities, how to spiritualize them. Then there is Raja Yoga or Dhyana Yoga, how to focus. We have the mind and capacity to focus. Our great power comes from focus. Without focus, no power, no spiritual path will work. But with focus, we can be successful in our worldly life and in spiritual life. So meditation shows us focus. And there are a vast number of meditation techniques. Then there is Bhakti Yoga, the how to focus all our energies and desires, all of it, channel it towards God, into love of God, into worship, surrender, faith, and love of and devotion, bhakti. So Bhakti Yoga. And then finally, we have the capacity for understanding, cognition. So using the power of cognition, of reason, how we can understand the truth about ourselves in this world, that our real nature, what is our real nature. All of these, and there are varieties in each of these paths. And Sanatana Dharma does not reject any one of them. Sanatana Dharma, you will find the great acharyas, whether it's Adi Shankaracharya, or Ramanujacharya, or Madhvacharya, or Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all of them, they include all the yogas. Depending on the particular philosophy, the particular paradigm, some may stress one yoga more than the other, but all of them have a place for all the yogas. First, we start outermost, that is karma yoga. Our activities, first of all, have to be ethical. We must move from an immoral lifestyle to an ethical, moral lifestyle. See, one way of classifying human beings, I think it's in the Vichar Sagar, four categories of human beings. One is called Pamara. Pamara, literally the Sanskrit word, and some in Hindi also, it means uncultured person, instinctive life. I want something, I grab it. A young child might be like that, an animal is like that sometimes, instinctively grabbing something. Um, so these are people who want only pleasure, kama, and maybe also artha, wealth and success and power. However, by hook or crook, as long as the police does not catch me, as long as the IRS tax service does not catch me, somehow or the other I will be rich and I will enjoy life. This kind of um, pravritti, tendency, comes from a pamara nature, instinctive life. What's wrong with that? They are also seeking happiness, but this is short-lived and not sustainable. Very soon life becomes full of suffering. You just have to take a look at the life of an alcoholic or of a drug addict. It is full of suffering. They are doing it for happiness. They started, but now they feel trapped. They find themselves trapped. Rich person entered detox center for getting rid of alcoholism. Now, just think, that person is rich. And alcohol gives him or her pleasure. So why not keep on drinking as much as possible? Because very soon that pleasure turns into pain. It is intolerable. And they realizes, I am bound by this. So that Pamara lifestyle is not sustainable and it does not give happiness. It very soon gives more unhappiness than happiness. So quickly we are forced to the next level, which is Vishayi, Dharmika Vishayi. Vishayi is a person who is interested in the same things, Artha and Kama, but soon realizes, I cannot do this without a basis of decency, of moral life, of discipline. So to be wealthy, to enjoy life in a sustainable manner, I need dharma. What is moral, what is immoral, I should distinguish and stick to the moral and try to give up the immoral. So dharmika life is more sustainable. The goal is the same, pleasure and enjoyment, but instead of just artha and kama, this person has gone up to a higher level, dharma artha kama. Dharma, on the basis of that, pursue worldly goals. But still, what is the problem here? We're still pursuing something which is impermanent and cannot be deeply satisfying. Remember the warning given by the great Sankhya master Ishvara Krishna in that book, Sankhya Karika. Atyanta ekanta bhava. There is no permanent happiness in worldly things, and no guarantee of any kind of happiness or solution of problems from worldly solutions. So now this person becomes interested in higher life. It reads about God and devotion to God and meditation and the possibility. Like Narendranath Datta, he becomes Vivekananda. How? He goes around asking, "Sir, have you seen God?" And he goes, finally finds his answer from Sri Ramakrishna, who says directly to him, "Yes, I have seen God. As I see you, I've seen God, and you too can." So this promise that there is something higher than worldly life, and that can give us a greater level of wellness. See, the farmer also wants wellness, but sabotages himself or herself by addiction and by immoral life. The dharmika vishay, the worldly person with morals and decent life, majority are like that. They also want wellness, and they find a little better way of getting wellness, but that is impermanent, and finally everything comes to an end and it's not satisfying. Then comes the next third level, the sadhaka, who is a spiritual seeker, who is a yogi. Karma yogi, bhakti yogi, dhyana yogi, jnana yogi is a yogi. What is this person seeking? He's seeking moksha, the highest ideal of wellness presented in Indian civilization. Many names are there: moksha, mukti, nirvana, kaivalya, apavarga. So many names are there, but they all mean transcending this limited worldly sphere and attainment of something eternal, something deeply satisfying, permanently satisfying, and from which perspective even the heaviest of sorrows in life, they will not shake you. um, it is not running away from life. When Sri Ramakrishna says you put on the shoes and then you walk in life, the thorns of life will not affect you anymore. He gives another example. In villages, jackfruit, if you want to cut and pluck a jackfruit and open it, the villagers know they have to put oil on their hands. Otherwise, there's some stickiness there. It will stick to you and make a big mess. But if you put that oil and then you can open the jackfruit, it will not stick to you. He says it's just like that. Once you attain bhakti to the Lord, to Bhagavan, and then you plunge into the jackfruit of samsara, it will not stick to you. Like water on the lotus leaf, it slides off. This person becomes a sadhaka, seeking moksha, not the sakama dharma, the dharma, pursuing dharma for worldly results, not artha and kama, but moksha. And maybe a sannyasi, maybe in a householder life, but it becomes sadhaka or sadhika, seeking moksha. And by the way, it's not that these yogas are meant only for sannyasis, not at all. Remember, Sri Krishna was a householder and Arjuna was a householder. And after teaching Gita also, both remained householder. But sannyasi-like qualities are necessary for sadhaka, that's all. Sadhaka seeks God realization, enlightenment. And higher than this, there's one more category called Siddha. Siddha is a perfected one who has gone beyond, like Shankaracharya sings, na dharmo na chartho na kamo na moksha chidananda rupa shivoham shivoham. That going beyond this goals of kama, pleasure, artha, wealth and success and power, and then there is the dharma, a moral, ethical life, and then the highest one is moksha, spiritual freedom. Having attained it, now no more goal remains. They've already discovered something where is a permanent source of wellness. So one cannot be shaken from there. Yoga is the way to that. It starts with moral, ethical life. One goes from pamara to vishayi, dharmika vishayi. But that's not enough. I am doing work morally, nothing wrong in what I do, but it's still for worldly ends. It becomes spiritual when I go one step higher. That same karma I now do it for the welfare of others as a worship of Bhagavan, as a worship of the Lord. Same karma. You may have a family, you're doing your duty to the family, you have a job, you have your responsibilities in community. All of that now becomes yoga. Earlier it was just karma, but now yoga can be attached to it because I am not doing it for my artha and kama goals, for my petty worldly concerns, not alpa. Upanishad says, yad alpam tan martyam. What is small, limited, personal, individual, cut off from others, that is death. Yo vai bhuma tad amritam. Says that which is the vast, that is immortal. Immortality, it leads to moksha. And bhumaiva sukham, that the vast, God, Brahman, Atman, that itself is real joy, real wellness. Yadalpam na alpe sukham asti. In the limited, in the individual, in our worldly concerns, petty, changing worldly concerns, there is no real happiness, no real wellness. Yo vai bhuma tat sukham, that which is the vast, infinite, God, Brahman, that is happiness. Bhumaiva sukham, the vast infinity alone is happiness. Now we convert our activities, all our activities, into the worship of the ever-present Lord. In the temple, you have the Ramakrishna temple in Dallas. When you go there, in the kirtan, in the puja, in the mantra japa, there our activities are directly connected to Sri Bhagavan. But in the house also, when you're driving to the temple or to the office, when you're taking care of your husband, wife, children, in all of that, find your Gopala, find your Bhagavan in all of them, and all the activities, whether driving, cooking, working in the office, cleaning the house, they all become like the seva you would do in a temple. It's a very powerful method. Karma yoga, we often say that is sort of preliminary, and then we go on to the real practice of bhakti or jnana or dhyana. But remember, karma yoga is the one which spiritualizes our whole of our life. How much time do we have for other spiritual practices? Most of our time and energy, especially if you are a busy householder, most of the time and energy is taken up by family, by your career. If we cannot convert those into spiritual practice, then spiritual practice becomes a small endeavor, and the maximum time and energy is taken by the world. That time and energy which is taken by the world, we have to do those activities, but how to convert it into spiritual practice? That was the key insight given by Bhagavan, by Sri Krishna to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, that when Arjuna became interested in Vedanta, Atma Jnana, second chapter, he did not want to fight the war, doesn't want to do his duty. And when he heard about the nature of the Atman, he says, it's very good, I will do this. Why fight the war? And Sri Krishna says, in order to become enlightened, you still have to do your karma. The field of battle, Kurukshetra, all of us have a field of battle. We have to convert that into Dharma Kshetra, into a place for practice of higher spirituality, if we want our wellness. Then not only the external activities, but what about inside? Our thoughts and emotions, desires. Our desires are pouring outwards in 100 different streams, 1,000 different streams. I want this, I want that, I get it, not satisfied. If I don't get it, frustrated. So these are only two results in life, in worldly life. Either you will get what you want and you will be dissatisfied. Momentary happiness, then dissatisfied. Or we will not get what we want and it will be frustration. Instead of chasing these limited goals, whose will leads to frustration or dissatisfaction, we now turn our attention towards all the desires are collected and channeled towards God, in whichever form your ideal, Ishta Devata. So my love, my desire is for God only. That which goes towards the world, the same energy is called desire, kama. But the same energy is plucked up, purified, and channeled towards Bhagavan. It becomes bhakti, devotion. Uh, the reason why people feel sometimes, I don't feel the love for God, or my spiritual practices are mechanical. It's because what I really want, the heart is still attached to the world. It's going outwards. And the higher spiritual practice of bhakti, that has no power behind it, because the desire is still pointed towards the world, not towards God. So this has to be turned Godwards. The same energy. And it gives real happiness and real wellness. If you fall in love with a human being, it will give you some happiness, but also give you a lot of misery. If you fall in love with God, it will give you only happiness. Does it mean we will not love human beings? Yes, we love human beings. But here is the secret. You love human beings as God, and as our Bhagavan, as our Gopal, Radha Krishna, who dwells in the heart of all living beings. So when I love a human being, could be husband, wife, father, mother, children, community members, anybody, strangers, we are loving Radha Krishna, my Ishta Devata, in whichever form you worship God, in the heart of that person. It may seem like imagination at first, but actually that's a fact. What we say that we are in love with a person, that's actually a delusion. That person, a human person, is a continuously changing entity, and therefore bound to produce suffering if you try to love this material, like a love of body or even a personality. Deep devotion to God and seeing God in all beings. Reading the Leela, the stories of, from Bhagavatam, from the lives of the saints, it elevates the mind and gives a pure, deep joy. And from that perspective, one can deal with suffering also. So the mind, internal environment inside the, it's like becoming, the body becomes a temple, and in our minds it becomes like the interior of a temple where the deity, the Vigraha, is present as the Ishta Devata in the heart. It becomes a continuous worship, continuous flow of love. But even that, one may have to step back from that once or twice in a day in the deepest silence of meditation. Quieten. External activities, shut it down, sit quietly in meditation, and internal, even the good thoughts, that also one can shut down for a short while and realize yourself. Um, Patanjali says, Yoga chitta vritti nirodha, tada drashtu swarupe avasthanam. Yoga is the quietening, stilling of the modifications of the mind. And what happens when you still the modifications of the mind? Bad thoughts are long gone, good thoughts are shut down, and you realize that we are not the mind. Swami Vivekananda gives the example of a lake with pure water, like a Himalayan lake or an alpine lake, and the water is still. It's like glass, clear glass, and you can see straight through to the bottom of the lake. Similarly, when the mind is pure and still, then I, the witness of the mind, I, the consciousness which shines upon the mind, my real nature becomes clear to me. And I stay in that peace. Yoga, crucial, if you want to describe yoga in one word, it is focus, concentration. Swami Vivekananda said, the concentration is the secret of all knowledge. The way, the power, the method of getting all knowledge is concentration of the powers of the mind. And Swami Vivekananda's concentration, powers of concentration was legendary, famous. There's a story of his disciple, Sharat Chandra. Once he went to Belur Mutt, the headquarters of our order, established by Swami Vivekananda. In Swami Vivekananda's room, he found this Encyclopedia Britannica, and that old edition, heavy volumes, whole shelf, 10 volumes. And Sharat Chandra said, Swamiji, this is impossible for one human being to read all these big books in one life. And Swami Vivekananda said, what are you saying? I have already finished 9 of them. You can ask me any question from any one of them. And Sharat Chandra actually took out these volumes randomly and picked out from this page and that page, asked questions. Swami Vivekananda answered all those questions, sometimes in the same language, down to the comma and the full stop. And Sharat Chandra was amazed. How is this possible? And Swamiji says, it is possible for everybody. It's just the power of purity and concentration of mind. Purification of the mind done by Karma Yoga. Concentration of the mind done by Raja Yoga or Dhyana Yoga. I used to think that, is he exaggerating? Only concentration of mind. If you ask a scientist, they will say, no, it's not just concentration of mind. There's scientific method, the research team will be there, and this process is there for discovering scientific truths. But then I read one of the greatest, maybe the greatest scientist of the 20th century, in some ways greater than Einstein also, John von Neumann, who was a Nobel laureate. He, he, uh, he there's a biography of him, about him, and which says that Neumann was convinced that he could crack any problem, scientific problem, a mathematical problem, by the sheer power of the concentration of his mind. So when I read that, I said, look, here is von Neumann, the leading scientist of the 20th century, saying exactly what Swami Vivekananda said nearly 100 years before that. So power of the mind depends on focus, not just in spiritual life, of course in spiritual life, but for worldly life also. You want to succeed in academics, you want to succeed in your profession, whether it's business or whatever it is, in personal life also. One must focus, one must concentrate in the moment on the job that you are doing, on the person you are with. It becomes a habit. The mind, Swami Vivekananda used to say, remember, you have only one mind. So you train it to focus throughout, it will develop the power of focus. So focus, concentration is essential in spiritual life. We often loosely say the power of our mind is infinite. Well, it is infinite, but also not infinite. It's also limited. Our minds have limited cognitive capacity. That's why focus is necessary. The limited, like the sun, rays of the sun scattered everywhere. If you focus it through a magnifying glass, it can actually burn paper. Similarly, the rays of our mind, that is our attention, has to be focused. Attention is limited. Cognitive bandwidth is limited. The scientist, cognitive scientist, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, he studied attention and flow and wrote this beautiful book, Flow, where he says the essence of a high quality of life is concentration. What makes our life worth leading is concentrating the limited resources of the mind on some worthwhile object. You can see children becoming concentrated in video games also. But what is wrong with that? See, after some time, if you do that, if we can become concentrated in video game or just browsing the internet, after 1 or 2 hours, you will find you don't feel good. You feel you have gone from a higher level to a lower level. If you don't feel integrated, fulfilled. But if you concentrate on some worthwhile subject, a good book that you are reading, focus on the image of the deity, the Ishtadevata in the heart, then it leads to a higher quality of life, much greater degree of wellness. There is a saying that, I think it was Milton who said that the mind in its own place can create a hell out of heaven and a heaven out of hell. And it's true. If you look around yourself, you see so many people who have extraordinary lives, so much wealth and privilege and talent and opportunity wasted. Maybe drug addict or something. And including, I'm going all the way to suicide. All opportunities, privileges there, wasted. Heaven was converted into hell by only one thing, mind. And opposite also we have seen. You see people with great disadvantages, maybe social disadvantage, physical disadvantage, mental disadvantage, pushing ahead and achieving great things, converting what might be a hell into a heaven. Only one factor, mind. So mind in its own place can convert a hell, can make a hell of heaven and a heaven of hell. The key to that is concentration of the powers of mind. So meditation is very important. Of course, a vast range of meditation techniques are there. Then the fourth yoga. What is our true nature? Somebody said very nicely, a sadhu in Uttarakhand said, if you want peace of mind, do selfless action, karma yoga. If you want happiness, immediately, lasting, pure happiness, straight away, just now, fall in love with God, bhakti yoga. If you want power, concentration, then dhyana yoga. If you want truth about yourself and the world, jnana yoga is inquiry. Notice these three yogas, karma, bhakti and jnana, they use three powers or three domains of the human psyche. And there is the cognitive domain, reasoning, which is used by jnana yoga. There is the affective domain, emotions, which is used and harnessed by bhakti yoga. There is the cognitive domain, willpower, action, which is used, harnessed by karma yoga. What about dhyana? What does it do? It gives the power of focus, which has to be connected to all of these three. Without the power of focus, we are powerless. We are unable to do anything. To achieve great things in secular life, spiritual life, power of focus is necessary. Now I come to Jnana Yoga, where we are using the cognitive capacity to reason and inquire and understand. There we start with ourselves. Often I've seen these days, it is difficult to start with bhakti for many young people. I cannot believe, because bhakti requires some faith. In the very beginning, if you are skeptical, I don't believe in God, I don't believe in all that, then as sometimes people, sometimes it's the fault of the parents also, they impose, they feel something is good and immediately impose it on the children. A much better way is to practice it yourself and show the benefits by demonstration than imposing on the children. And children rebel. That's the very nature of the children. If your parents are telling me, then I won't do it. I remember myself how my parents were devoted. They're very close to the Ramakrishna ashram. They would go there regularly. They took me sometimes. But I remember one interesting thing is that there were so many books in the house, but they never really asked me to go. They were interested, and so they went. Once in a while they took me, but they did not ask me go to the ashram or do puja or read these books. It was all available around me and no pressure. So I took to it myself. I started reading Swami Vivekananda's books and so on. So, and I used to go to the ashram and sit down there in the temple, in the shrine. So this, I think, is a good lesson to learn for parents. Give all the opportunities, introduce the children, and after that, be in the background and demonstrate your own interest and the gain that you're getting in life from all of this. So I have seen people that they come to Jnana Yoga. Advaita Vedanta attracts many young people because this is the basis of reason and experience. And very interestingly, I've seen coming once through Advaita Vedanta and getting some confidence in the spiritual path, they become bhaktas also. They take to Bhakti Yoga and then gain devotion to the Lord, and Karma Yoga, and they take to meditation also. So this path of inquiry, it starts with ourselves. Why ourselves? You start with God, question immediately will come up, does God exist? I don't believe in God. Nobody can say, do I exist? Nobody can say, I don't believe in myself. Nobody asks anybody else, do you think I exist? Can you prove that I exist? So you can't do that. And so it's good to start with oneself. Who am I? What am I? We don't never inquire this. We just take this to be ourselves. We experience a body, a limited personality, a mind, and we say, I am this. And never inquire. What is there to inquire about, I feel? But Jnana Yoga says if you inquire, we will very soon see we cannot literally be this body. Body with its disease and physical problems and old age and an eventual death. We are not it. And Jnana Yoga will show us, not as a matter of faith, it will show us that we are actually not the body. We're not even the mind. What a great freedom it is to know that here is the body, here is the mind, but I am not the body mind. And then we discover, like Shankaracharya sings, Mano buddhyahankara chittani naham chidananda rupaha shivoham shivoham. I am of the nature of pure consciousness. As pure consciousness, I am one with Shiva. So that discovery we make, and from there comes a sense of oneness. Swami Vivekananda said, oneness is the only true religion. So all religious practices, yogas, they tend towards oneness. Swami Vivekananda gave some very nice test of truth. If it strengthens you, it is truth. Take it as nectar. If it weakens you, it's not truth. You shun it as poison. If it unifies, makes for oneness, it is truth. If it fractures and divides, then it is not truth. If it leads to selflessness, it is likely to be the truth. If it makes one more selfish, it's not the truth. So tests like this, strength, truth; weakness, not truth; unity, oneness, truth; division, not truth; selflessness, truth; selfishness, not truth. So nice ways of checking that the practice I am following, the philosophy I am following, my life itself, is it based on truth or not? We discover when we say Chidananda Rupa Shivoham, our nature is one, the entire universe is one with me. It is not that there is something separate, other people, God, world is separate. No, from that ultimate perspective, it is one reality, and that gives deep and lasting peace. So these are the ways of this wellness. What spiritual life can do is to remove suffering at the deepest level. Yoga can work at the both levels. At the physical level, mental level, it can help. But at the deepest, most spiritual level, it can give us access to the lasting wellness and overcoming suffering completely. Atyantika dukkha nivritti paramananda praptischa. Complete cessation of sorrow and um, the attainment of deep, lasting peace, joy, wellness. I think I have sort of taken the time which was allotted to me.